Good morning. It is 9:02 a.m. on April 11th, 2012, and this meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board is now in session. Ms. Rowe, are there any public comments? Item 3, adoption of the minutes for the CRRMA Board of March 14th, 2012.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. As you can see today, we're a little light on board members. We have a couple board members who are not here today, David Marcus and Jim Volk. We've also, unfortunately, received a resignation letter from Dr. Payan. Dr. Payan has an amazing opportunity to become a visiting professor with the James Baker Public Policy School at Rice University that he's accepted, and so he will be leaving for that opportunity and leaving El Paso for Houston, and hopefully returning soon back to El Paso. But in the meantime, he has tendered that resignation. He was a founding board member, along with our vice chair here, Mr. Adame, as well as David Marcus, and we are very grateful for his service to the board and for his passion for this community and his diligence in regards to fulfilling his duties as a board member. So on the record, I would just like to say a big thank you to Dr. Payan and wish him all the best. If you have an opportunity to see him, please let him know how much we appreciate his service on the board. Mr. Tejas, was there anything that you wanted to add in that regard?
Thank you.
Item 4, presentation and status report on the Loop 375 Cesar Chavez Border Highway Managed Lanes project by the Texas Department of Transportation. Mr. Calvo, good morning.
Good morning. Eduardo Calvo with TxDOT here in El Paso. We're going to do a tag team here. I'm going to start the presentation, and Rebecca Pinto is our project manager for the construction phase of the project. All the good things are her doing. All the bad things, you always know who to blame, right?
You.
So we can bring it up.
There it is.
While we're waiting, I believe we're looking at a completion date of March 2013. Is that correct?
That's a little aggressive. I think it's something, right? It's in the presentation.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to kind of, we're looking to accelerate the project, Mr. Calvo.
Right. Let me start very quickly with the overview of the project. Again, this is the project. The whole project consists of rebuilding the existing 2 lanes per direction, or the existing 4 lanes, general purpose lanes, and also we're going to be adding 2 toll managed lanes that are going to be on the inside. The limits from the Zaragoza port of entry to pretty much US 54. The construction limits are a little bit shorter than that. No right-of-way, and the funding for this project comes from $74 million of Proposition 14 bonds and $6.25 from a federal earmark. In terms of the milestones, some of the agreements that we have executed between TxDOT and the RMA regarding the toll managed lanes, you can see them on the screen. It's been a collection of agreements, very interesting negotiations when we were doing the market evaluation waiver process that really sets a basis for the tolling element of the managed lanes. Again, we got environmental clearance in September 2009, the schematic, and developed the PSME, which is the detailed engineering, and led the contract for construction in April. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becky to give you a description of what we're doing now in the construction, the schedule, milestones, and all that. And I'll be available for any questions that I may be able to answer.
Thank you. Good morning. As you can see, this is a typical section of the proposed roadway. We've got the 2 existing lanes that were revamped. They're concrete, and we've got the managed lane that's shown as the express toll. And you'll see the gantries that show the text tag sign. That's the managed lane beneath that. Sound barriers will be installed on the good majority of the project limits on the north side. We've got about 12 walls that are going in. There are 2 different types. One that you can see up on the top left, that one is going to be mounted adjacent to the roadway on the barrier. And then the other is on the right to the bottom, and those are the ones that are mounted on the ground level, where we have more right-of-way, more room. And those are the colors that are shown, that are proposed, and it's the same on the bottom. This is
Do these run the length of the project?
just in the areas where there's residential adjacent to the highway,
Okay.
and it's on the northern side. This is the district master plan color palette. And so far for our construction, the original contract time, we had 696 working days, which are a 6-day work week. We began construction July 8th, 2011, and the construction timeline was,
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Going back to the sound barriers, those are obviously on the side where there's residential. What are we doing for the other side? Anything? Any aesthetics at all?
no, sir,
Okay. Nothing's planned.
nothing is planned.
Okay, let me ask another question. I know we were talking about this aesthetic project. Is this in line, or is it too late to do anything related to that in coordination with that? I mean, we're in this project, whether it's the colors or something different, because we're, right. Yeah. Maybe we're too far down on the design, but we just approved this aesthetic project, and how does this coordinate or relate to, or can it?
Well, the aesthetics project that the RMA is working with the city is along the I-10 corridor.
Right.
So this is a different corridor. Now,
Right.
regarding this project in particular, there's some elements of aesthetics that are incorporated into the sound walls, but again, we're under construction, so the design is already completed and all that. However, there's always an opportunity to maybe change or add things. That's something that we're beginning to think about.
Well, I think just going forward as we do these projects, we ought to think about that coordination, so we're not having to redo things in the future, that it's already incorporated in the projects that are coming up.
Right, and we are doing that. I mean, I think the aesthetics are becoming more of an element of the actual design for every major TxDOT project. Of course, people say that it's not close, to being enough. There's always people that want more and more, but there's always a cost element that we need to be very, very aware of, not only for construction costs, but maintenance costs, whether it's landscaping or some, more complicated aesthetic elements.
Okay, yeah, my only concern is, this is going to be our first truly toll project, and obviously it's going to be scrutinized probably more than anything else we've done up to this point because of the financial impact it's going to have on the community. And so I'm just curious to see if there's any way at this juncture, if there's something we can do about the aesthetics on both sides to, make it like our signature project since it's the first one out of the chute. I'd hate for us to stumble coming out of the chute on our first project, but is everything set in stone, or is anything that can be done by the city, the RMA, or TxDOT, or the feds?
I would say it's set in stone. I mean, as we progress into the construction, it becomes a little more, more complicated, difficult, and expensive to change order stuff. However, it's not impossible.
Okay, even landscaping, for example, that would not necessarily be tied to the construction schedule. And I'm talking about on the south side of the border highway, or the Cesar Chavez Highway.
Even landscaping, because even if we're very careful in selecting the plants and all that, native species and all that don't require a lot of water, but there's always watering issues, installation and all that. So there's always the added cost of construction and maintenance, long-term maintenance. But again, that's something that we're beginning to talk about and see if there's an opportunity to do something about that.
Mr. Calvo, I think I agree with both board members here, and perhaps there is something we can do. It looks like these sound barriers are some sort of stamped concrete, a simple design element that ties in with what they're doing perhaps on I-10 to kind of make a complete picture as you're coming down, because we'll be talking about another segment that basically connects up to I-10 with a managed lane further on the agenda today. And, I'd be curious to see if we could at least take a look at what the opportunities are to improve the aesthetics here and make kind of more of a complete picture. Is that something that you could look at and tell us what is possible?
Well,
I think we can take a look, and and the sound barrier, for example, that's shown on the top. Those are what's going to be placed in areas where we have limited right of way, where there's no space to really place it to the outside. And also, the one on the bottom, there's a lot of areas where the right-of-way is very limited, so we would have to look into the areas where there is more right-of-way width that we can, where it won't be an obstruction off the side of the roadway, so.
I believe Mayor Pro Tem Acosta had a few comments. Could we allow her to ask a few questions?
Good morning, members of the Mobility Authority. Emma Acosta, City Representative for District 3. This project goes along a large portion of my district. And one of the things that happened I think it's been almost a year ago, was that there were a lot of trees, a lot of pine trees along Border Highway, and they were all pulled out for the construction project. So then I started getting a lot of calls from my constituents asking, well, you're pulling them out, what are you going to do in its place? And so I have been asking TxDOT for a long time now, what are you doing in its place? What kind of aesthetics are you doing? And it was like, well, we're going to do something. And it was like, we're going to do something, but nothing was really shown to me. So this is not the first time, I am in total agreement with you. This is a signature project. It should be a signature project. It is the first toll road that we have in El Paso. And so with that, I've been asking every single month. I'm on the Transportation Policy Board, and every month I'll ask, what is going on. I asked about the sound walls, where are they going to be located, and it was just like, well, they're there, but we don't know what they're going to look like. So it wasn't until this week that I actually found out, how they were going to look, where they were going to be located. And when I asked about aesthetics, there was none. Okay, not even on the overpasses, nothing. And so I said, well, this being the first project that we have, it should be something that we are very proud of. This is going to have a revenue stream so that whatever aesthetics you have on it should be able to maintain it, should be able to be maintained. And it was like, well, it was kind of like an afterthought. So, with all due respect to TxDOT, and I understand that, they were working with what they've got, but it's not like the first time that they've heard about an aesthetics, component to it. So, I hope that you insist on having something like that we have a project that is spectacular, one that if people travel on it, they will say, you know what, this is great. If this is what toll roads are going to look like, then, we don't mind having them. As it was, people in the area were against the project. They thought that they were putting a toll road there because of their socioeconomic status, which is not the case. And so we want these people that live along that area, travel on Border Highway, along with many others that actually now take the loop 375 to get to the interstate off of US 54 or to travel all the way downtown. And it should be a road that you say, you know what, I want to travel on that road. It looks so nice. I want to travel on that road because, it's just like, this is a spectacular road. And I know that maybe I am focusing too much on that. I know that the construction is ahead of its schedule. I know that the whole street was reconstructed, which is great. But again, if it's a toll project, it's a toll road, it's going to have a revenue stream, something that you can use to maintain any part of any aesthetics project that you have. The other thing that I asked was, on the south side of the road, that where we already have an ugly border wall. Couldn't we just landscape it with, natural plants that are in the area, cactus or whatever, something that makes it look nice. You can't have just one side of that highway looking nice and not the other one. So I do hope that you continue to pursue this. I hope that TxDOT, listens to my concerns and the constituents' concerns all along that 8 miles of toll road that we're going to have. It is our first one, and I hope you consider on making it one that El Paso is proud of, and one that if we have other toll road projects in El Paso, that we see it as something that is positive in our community. So thank you very much.
Representative Acosta, thank you. The board hears you loud and clear, and I will commit on behalf of the board, myself, our vice chair, and our board members, along with Mr. Tejas and TxDOT, that prior to our next board meeting, we will give you some answers, some hard answers in regards to what is possible, what we can do, and get that in front of you for review. I'm not sure what that is yet, so let me figure out what that is, but prior to the next board meeting, we will have that resolved.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Another question I think y'all might have is on the form liners for this concrete wall, and it is going to be double-sided, so they will have the same pattern on the residential side as well, which will also be painted the same. So I know that was probably a question y'all had as well. And continuing, originally the contract time began on July 8th, 2011, and the original end date was supposed to be October 2013. In discussions with the contractor and partnering efforts, we were able to allow to do a change order where we combined the phasing, changed the sequencing of the work, so we were able to work on 2 phases at once, where we were working on the whole length of the project. So we were able to reduce the time from the 696 working days originally to 626 working days, which brings our end date to August 2013. Currently, the construction, we're in 2 different phases right now. We're on the portion from Zaragoza all the way to midway between Midway and Yarborough. We are in the later phase of construction where we started working on the outside. We've shifted traffic to the inside, where we've also, with this change order that we had, we were able to adjust the traffic control. So originally, in the phasing that we had, construction was going to be in 1 lane for the whole duration of the project. But we were able to change the traffic control where we were allowed to make it 2 lanes in each direction. So I think that has helped a lot. And the contractor's also been working with us, and in order to try and get these open expeditiously, because originally we were not supposed to open any of the new portions newly constructed until the end of the phase. So I think, we've been doing well with trying to get things open so that it's less of an impact to the traveling public. So the other portion between Yarborough and Midway, all the way to the end of the project at Fonseca, or after Fonseca to US 54, we're working on the inside portion of the lanes. So traffic is currently in a single lane condition. But as we have construction completed in those areas, we're going to be continuing to open new segments until we get it all completed in the inside and have all the construction starting on the outside. These are just pictures of the construction process. This is some earthwork preparation, and this is in the median, the inside portion. We've got traffic on the outside in 1 single lane. This is the grading, where right before we put the hot mix, everything is graded to the elevations they need to be. This is a hot mix placement, which goes above beneath the concrete pavement section. These are the concrete paving operations. And then this is some of the drainage, a slotted drain. This is an area where we're working closer to Plant Road. This is the beam hanging where we widen the bridges to the inside. And this is the bridge deck pour that we completed. And that's all. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the board members?
Just the concern that there's, I didn't hear about any planting. I guess I didn't get a clear answer about the landscaping.
As far, like in this project for construction, the only aesthetic improvements that we have are the sound barriers that have the aesthetic treatment with the form liner and the painting. And then all of the center barrier that we've got, we have the existing, part of the existing is going to be reused, and then we have some that are cast in place. All of the barrier gets repainted, and it all has that formed treatment. But as far as any aesthetic improvements in planting, we don't have that already in the project.
And nothing is planned for the median in the entire route?
On the inside, no.
Nothing.
Mr. Calvo, real quickly, there was the funding sources for this. There's 2. There's that federal earmark that's been on the books for a number of years, and then there's the $74 million. I believe there's going to be some excess funding based on what the project let for. Is it possible to use some of that funding to address some of these concerns with landscape? And it's my understanding if all those funds aren't used, basically any excess is returned to Austin. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we would need to talk about. I think that this is a funding source that would be easier to deal with in terms of maybe finding some additional money to complete any change orders regarding aesthetics. The one thing that we do need to be aware of is that the right-of-way on this project is very, very limited. On the south side, we're facing directly with the border, and the Border Patrol is very, very picky about the things that we put, close to their operations.
I can understand that.
And IBWC.
Why don't we work with your team, come up with some answers ourselves that we can address to Representative Acosta and the community, and come up with some sort of solution that we feel will satisfy everyone's concerns. But I'll commit that the RMA board will work with Raymond and you, and we'll get those answers. We'll see what we can do.
And we echo that commitment. We need to start that because, again, as Becky was saying, the project is moving so fast. If we're going to do something, it's got to be decided very quickly.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. Any questions? Item 6, discussion and action on a board resolution granting the executive director the authority to, oops, I've missed an item here. I'm sorry. Back to item 5. Item 5, update, discussion, and action on the Loop 375 America's Managed Lanes project from approximately the Zaragoza port of entry to the America's interchange. Mr. Tejas.
Raymond Tejas, Executive Director. As you may recall, some time ago, the RMA borrowed $1.1 million from TxDOT. And the point of that loan, the toll equity loan, was to actually pursue what we referred to as the blue projects within the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. Those are all of the proposed toll projects within that 2008 Comprehensive Mobility Plan. And part of what we did with that $1.1 million was develop what we referred to as the Regional Toll Implementation Plan, the RTP. That plan, that document each of you have, and I can get you copies if you need it, and we also have it posted on our website. That plan, the intent of that plan was really to lay the groundwork for how this RMA was going to pursue the blue projects and really kind of develop a roadmap in terms of which project was first and that sort of thing. So clearly, Cesar Chavez was first. It was fully funded, and that project is underway. The next project that was identified within the Regional Toll Implementation Plan for development was the America's Managed Lanes section, and that it's a 4.2-mile section that connects from Zaragoza Port of Entry, so in essence, the eastern edge of the Cesar Chavez project, up to the Americas interchange at I-10. 4.2 miles, and really the intent of that project is very similar to Chavez, where you've got 2 lanes in each direction. We would be adding 1 managed lane in each direction to the center. Now, the beauty of this project is that there's enough median space that likely you won't have to push those existing 4 lanes out like you had to do with Chavez. But it's early in the project. We don't have all the details yet. So what I thought, it had been some time since we had talked about the regional toll plan, what I thought would be of use for the board is a refresher on the project. So I've asked Pete Jacobs from our GEC team to come down and brief you all on the project, the limits, what are we looking to do with it, and then after Pete shares that information with you, I'll kind of brief you on where we are in terms of next steps. So with that, Pete?
Okay. Pete Jacobs, GEC. We have a slide on the Elmo. It just sort of gives you an idea of the outline of the whole limits of this. The far west edge of this is pretty much defined. We'll connect up to Cesar Chavez. The other end, which is up towards, and looking at this picture, north being up, I-10 is where Americas is being built. The limits of the interchange, the west to south and the north to west connectors will limit where this project will come into effect, because we have to be beyond those before we put in the managed lane into that area for this project. So the intent, as we said before, be very similar. It'll look just like what Becky showed you on the Cesar Chavez. It'll be a 2-lane. That's what's out there today is 2 lanes. And then we will add to the inside a managed lane in each direction. There is sufficient room throughout to add that. You will eliminate the median pretty much, but you will end up putting a center barrier in through that area. And we'll take it and go over several bridges. There's like 4 bridges on this project. And that's part of the reason why this, right now the budget on this is about $38 million. And that's part of the reason why it's up that high, is because we'll have to widen those bridges to the inside. The scope of services will involve a lot of environmental issues. Surprisingly, even though we're in the middle of the highway, we still have some environmental issues that will have to be addressed. And we sure are going to do some landscaping and some aesthetic involvement on this one. We have plenty of room, as a matter of fact, to do that on this one. Whether we have to do sound barriers or not, that'll have to be analyzed. But anything else could be added throughout these areas. Pretty much it.
Who are you looking at utilizing to do some of these services for this particular project?
What's going on right now, if I may, is we're in the process now of defining and going through and identifying a scope of services to do this as a two-phase type project. First would be doing environmental / schematic. That would be going out for bids or out for proposals and using an outside source. And then the second one would be to minimum do a design. Could go design build. We'll have to make a decision later on how that's done. That too would be going out for proposals.
So to underline that, I think it's very, very important. We've been hearing a lot about the local firms saying that they've not had opportunities to bid on projects. This is the next one, and this is one that we've been talking about for some time. So we're pleased to say that we are developing the procurement process for the environmental schematic, and hopefully we can have that out fairly soon.
The intent is to have it out well before the end of this year, but we're shooting for much sooner than that.
Okay, and can I take it one step further? Are you going to solicit local or nationwide?
We would have to, if there's any FHWA funding in it whatsoever, we cannot restrict just to local.
Okay.
That's a requirement by FHWA.
Right, but as you know, we've made a number of contacts here locally that we will be sharing this information with. We'll be working specifically with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that all of their members are aware of this procurement. We'll be working with the local engineering community firms, community groups. We'll be working with everybody that we've been discussing these items with over the past few months. So no one in El Paso in the engineering community will not have heard of this project.
To date, I've met with 5 different firms, and have 2 more firms already lined up since we had our presentation. So we are talking with them. We are discussing this project. I found out this week that we're going to take it from the environmental portion of it all the way through, which helps.
Good.
So we'll be adding that also.
I'm watching.
I know.
Super. Any questions for Mr. Jacobs?
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
And that's really, the intent of this item was really just to briefly remind you all of the project, remind the community of the project, talk a little bit about the regional toll implementation plan, which can be found on our website, which provides additional project details and details on the RMA in particular. So
It's important, too, as we're talking about the aesthetics for Cesar Chavez, since this will link up and be kind of a contiguous piece, that we look at maybe somehow folding that into this project and just have a complete continuous message all the way through that particular corridor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So no action is requested on this item.
Item 6, discussion and action on a board resolution granting the executive director the authority to make certain expenditures in relation to the I-10 at Loop 375 America's Interchange project. Mr. Tejas.
So this item is a result of some recent activity at the Americas Interchange project. Let me back up and talk a little bit about the RMA in general. The RMA has its procurement policy in place, which authorizes the executive director to make expenditures of up to $25,000 without prior board approval. And the intent of that is really to provide flexibility in the administration of the duties of the executive director, and that was approved by the board several years back. I believe it was in 2009. The Americas Interchange project, of course, is we have a $108 million comprehensive development agreement with the developer, and that agreement actually provides authorization to the executive director to make the expenditures of $108 million, period. Outside of that, this board has expressly authorized the approval of change order number 1, which added $300,000 to that $108 million, and change order number 2, which added an additional $21,250. So my total authority to make expenditures is limited to the $108 million plus the $300,000 plus the $21,250. A recent issue has come up And as you know, as the RMA is completing the design work for the westbound to southbound direct connector, as we developed those designs, an issue came up in relation to some existing column foundations. TxDOT, when they developed the original phase of the Americas Interchange project, actually designed and installed certain foundations and left them there for future use. As we were developing the original Americas Interchange project, the 3 direct connectors, we actually provided information to the developers about those buried foundations, and if they so desired, they could utilize those in their design work. Well, we intend to do the same for the westbound-southbound design package. However, since they're buried, obviously they're not apparent in terms of where their location is. So a question came up in terms of how could we go out and dig them up, identify them, and survey them, and provide those exact details within the design package. The answer ultimately is we needed about $5,000 to $6,000 to do that. Now, ultimately, this issue has resolved itself, but the issue that became obviously apparent to me is I didn't have the authority to make those expenditures. So I would have to come to the board for an expenditure of $5,000 to $6,000 through a change order. So what you see before you here is a request from me for authorization to make expenditures up to $25,000 within the Americas Interchange project. The $25,000, of course, reflects the authority that you've already granted me through the procurement policy, so it matches there. And I've also built into the resolution, as you'll note, a requirement that if any such expenditures are made by the executive director, then I have to come back at the next board meeting to provide you information on that expenditure. So subject to your question, that's the history, and that's what I'm looking for today.
Any questions? I've myself and Mr. Adame have talked to Mr. Tejas about this. It gives him the kind of flexibility he needs. It ensures that we don't have to wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks to make a decision for a $5,000 item that potentially puts the project behind, and all of that will be reported at the board meetings and mirrors our current procurement process in general. So,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, discussion and action on the Executive Director's Report. A, update on general engineering, excuse me. A, update on general engineering consultants' use of local resources. B, update on fiscal year 11 financial audit. And C, update on Title VI audit. Mr. Tejas.
All right, under 7A, we're actually going to delete that item. The intent, and in fact, as Pete mentioned earlier, we had a vendor fair at the Chamber of Commerce over the past month, and one of the commitments that I made at that vendor fair was that I would provide some sort of formalized approach in terms of how our general engineering consultant would supplement his team by adding additional team members. That process I've loosely outlined, and I've worked it out with our attorneys, but they're reviewing the kind of the formalized process for doing that, and I should have the formal final proposed approach to the board at our next meeting. So I'm asking that this item be deleted. Item B is an update on the fiscal year 11 financial audit. As you'll recall, we had one finding within that audit, and it related to the carryover of the Interloop, the Spur 601 transactions, financial transactions, carrying those into the general ledger that are managed by the City of El Paso. What I committed to do at last month's board meeting was bring on a sort of CPA firm to handle those transactions for us and really act as the interface between myself and the City of El Paso for all of our fiscal agent duties that the city provides. Since then, I've brought on the firm of Peña Briones, the local CPA firm. You may recall that they were our prior auditors, so they're very familiar with the agency. They're also very familiar with the way that the City of El Paso operates in terms of their accounting. So I think it's a good fit. It's another local firm that we're hiring, and it's going to provide us a great deal of assistance as we move forward and we expand over this coming year. So I'm excited to share that with you. I've provided a copy of our agreement as part of your backup, should you have any questions.
And it actually meets the recommendations that were brought up in the audit, correct? So
Absolutely.
This is prudent and required for us to do this.
Absolutely. So in fact, task one, we've basically set it up as an hourly agreement. Task one is for them to essentially deal with the findings of fiscal year 11 audit. Beyond that, I've got a number of tasks, and I'll share those with you as we develop those, but we have a number of tasks that I'm looking forward to working with them for, or on rather, so they can help us streamline. One of those main tasks is to work out the quarterly reports to the full board and the financial committee. So I'm looking forward to getting those reports to you soon.
Yeah, I've asked Mr. Tejas to give us a more comprehensive view of where we are financially. We can discuss in the Finance Committee, and that's going to be part of meeting that request. So thank you for handling that, Mr. Tejas.
Absolutely. And again, no action on this one. This is for informational purposes. Same goes for item 7C, which is an update on the Title VI audit. I believe it was last month that I mentioned that the RMA was undergoing a Title VI review. Title VI relates to non-discrimination in the workplace. Included in your backup packet is the report from TxDOT in relation to our compliance review. You'll find that we actually had, I believe, 3 recommendations made, which was actually, we did quite well. The one recommendation requires action. The other 2 are simply recommendations. We have our attorneys right now working with TxDOT to identify that, and I should mention, the recommendations. The one that requires action relates to the RMA's development of procedures for processing external discrimination complaints. So our attorneys are working directly with TxDOT now to identify the requirements of those procedures, and I'll have that completed here within the next couple of weeks, and I'll share that with you upon completion. Now, at, I believe, last month's meeting, as I mentioned, we talked a little bit about Title VI, and that's when you identified the executive director as the Title VI officer. So with that resolution, you provided me with authority to actually implement this fix as well. So this is informational purposes. You have the report with you. Feel free to review it and give me a call with any questions that you may have. So again, that's informational purposes. No action is required. And subject to your questions, that's all that I have for you today.
A rather quick agenda. Is there any questions today or anything that needs any follow-up?
When will we be meeting on the aesthetic process for CSF?
Why don't I coordinate that with Mr. Tejas? We'll set up a meeting with TxDOT. We'll send the meeting to the board. Obviously, we're limited and not, we can only have a few members attend because of quorum issues, but we will get out with TxDOT, get some information out, see what's possible, and I think we could possibly have this. I've committed to Representative Acosta that we will have some answers to her before the next board meeting, so it might potentially be an item on the next agenda.
I could add it to the next agenda, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll meet in between now and then. Absolutely.
Super. And I'd like to do that sooner than later, so if we could get with Mr. Calvo and take a look at when we can sit down, Pete, take a look at your teams and see when we can address this. I have a sense of urgency to make this happen, so let's figure out a timeline, what we need to do, and let's get it done.
I'll speak with Mr. Calvo this afternoon.
Great. Without any questions, is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor? All those opposed? We are adjourned at 9:40 on April 11th, 2012. Thank you.